welcome to Round the Rotary podcast, everyone. This is me, your host, JP Warren, and I want to say thank you for tuning into this episode, this podcast. We appreciate all the support. We're about to come up on a year of this podcast, and as you and I were talking before, it is a lot of constant work. You know,
shocking amount of work.
Yeah. And again, everyone, thank you. Where it doesn't matter where you're tuning in from. Leave a review, tell us what you think, and again, thanks for the support. But before we begin, we got to say that Round the Rotary podcast is brought to you by Capital Petroleum Consultants. CPC specializes in project engineering, well site supervision, and all disciplines in the oil and gas industry. Contact us through www.capitalpetroleumconsultants.com to see what CPC can do for you today. That's the business voice. I mean, that's the podcast.
Sounds good.
Voice. It's the radio voice. And with us in the studio today, we have Kenneth Miller on LinkedIn, who is the CEO. And I wanted to say founder, but it was more like you were founder. But it was a lot of peer pressure for you to bring the other guys in to the group,
betraying
right?
my confidence already. Right?
So it was a co-founder.
Yeah,
co-founder, bringing the team in, bringing some good like-minded people in.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Abe Erdos is my original partner, right? He and I started together, right? And then his brother David joined us a bit later, a couple of years afterwards.
Okay.
And when we started, Abe and I were working together at the same company. It was a little NWD company called Teledrill. And the story of me meeting him is kind of one of the funnier ones because. I'm pretty good at software, okay? I'm pretty dangerous at software. I'm terrible at electronics, right? Just absolutely terrible.
Okay.
But I thought pretty highly of myself when I was in my late teens, early 20s, and we were working on these NVD projects. And so, Abe got hired maybe a couple months after I did, and he came in, and the first day he's on the job, he fixes a electronics problem that I'd been working on for a week in 30 minutes like it was nothing.
Okay.
And so, my whole self-esteem came crashing down, and I was like, who is this guy? I'm going to get him fired. Screw this guy, you know?
It sounds like this guy's about to get you fired.
Exactly, right?
We're paying this guy for a week when this guy can knock it out in 30 minutes.
Yeah, and so it was a really tough day for me, and I went home and I slept on it. I woke up the next morning and I was like, I'm going to make this guy my best friend.
Okay.
And so we've had a really fantastic working relationship, ever since then, right? And we definitely have strengths that complement each other. We both taught each other a lot over the years, and so it was great. And most people ask us how we got started, right? And so it's just a natural progression of this story. And so he and I were working on Teledrill, doing NWD stuff during the day, working on a pretty awesome tool at the time.
Okay.
And I've always been really interested in entrepreneurship, right? Like I've always had Steve Jobs as a hero and all these kind of guys. And the companies we were working for, I'd look at the managers and CEOs of these companies, and I'm like, I'm smarter than that guy.
Okay.
If he can do it, I can do it, right? And so, you remember IRC chat? Ever used IRC chat? It's like a really old nerdy thing from like 20 years ago, right?
I haven't. I know AOL. That's all I know.
Well, IRC was the more, if you knew what Linux was, you knew what IRC chat was and all this kind of stuff, right?
Buddy, you're talking to the wrong guy right now.
Yeah, so that's fine. and so, I met these guys out in California, and I flew out there on a whim. I'm like, well, this is either going to be a fun experience or I'm going to get my head chopped off or something, right? And so through this internet chat, and so get out there and hanging out in LA and just learning all about like companies and startups and everything else like that. And I flew out there a couple times, and I ended up with a couple of gigs. We met a realtor out there who was one of the guys that significantly contributed to the 2009 crash.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
But he had a Lamborghini, and he let me borrow it, and it was a lot of fun. And he had millions of dollars, and he was going to pay us to make a smart lock before anybody else made smart locks, right? Because he wanted it for his realty business. And I met this guy playing pool just in the right bar at the right time, and he wanted to make a car part, and so he knew how to do the mechanical engineering. And we're like, hey, we know electronics, we can build you a car part, right? And so, I started trying to do all this engineering work, this gig work I was getting on the side by myself. And I was doing okay in the software, but the electronics was a disaster. I was trying to do the electronics myself, and I kept burning my fingers on the transistors and screwing them all up. And I just finally called Abe because I knew Abe from work. And I'm like, Abe, help me out. And he's like, no, you can't do it that way. You got to do this. Go to Radio Shack, buy this one, not that one, et cetera. Do it this way, right? And so I roped him in over the phone, and he's been stuck with me ever since, right? And so we're working Teledrill at our day jobs, right? 40 hours a week. Yeah. We go to my parents' house and do 3 or 4 hours in the evening of consulting gig work, and that's pretty tiring after like 6 weeks.
That kind of sounds like the start of like one of these big like Amazons or something. Like, yeah, we had our day job.
Yeah, that's still the goal.
You know what I mean? Like that's kind of what it sounds like.
Yeah.
But it's kind of cool. Like, I'm gonna go back to this point. I mean, it's I don't know if this is just, who you are as a person or something like that, but usually when people come in and, there's a new person on the team or all that stuff, and let's pretend they outperform, just like finishing something in 30 minutes versus a week. Some people, view that as kind of a threat or a challenge, like, oh shit, just like you said, well, I got to get this guy fired. I got to do something about it. I got to protect my thing. But you kind of you're like, you know what? I'm going to be friends with this guy. I'm going to learn something from this person.
I had some very immature feelings for about 6 hours, and then I grew up. It was a good growing experience.
I'm just saying that probably speaks to, I guess how you view, conflict or challenges or people, or even being kind of you're threatened a little bit, like your job or your whatever. You're going to make friends.
Yeah.
You're gonna look at it in the better way versus kind of the attack mode, I feel.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of people fall prey to that for a longer period of time, right? And the reality is, if you just start going down your path and you start working on yourself every day and improving yourself, there's very little likelihood that you're just going to be made redundant because someone's slightly better than you. That's not how the world works, right? It's not. I guess it does in some capacities, right? That maybe I'm privileged not to experience, but in general, that's usually an irrational fear,
right?
So
let's rewind a little bit.
Sure.
Let's tell me about tell us about, I guess, your background. Kind of gives the elevator summary, but your background, where you grew up, and just kind of bring us up, kind of how you got in the oil field. Because I looked on your LinkedIn, you started off at a Texas Instrument.
I did, yeah.
Were you off right there off of 59, right there at the big little the complex right there?
Yep, 59 and near Stafford, right? So,
yeah,
I worked there for 4 or 5 years. Right?
I used to pass that all the time when I was coming back from a Noble drilling.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yep.
There's a couple interesting stories there. In high school, I didn't know shit about electronics or software or anything.
Really?
I was 18 years old, and I was like, "What's a circuit board? How does that work?" Right? And it's funny. I was super arrogant about. I'm not arrogant, but way overestimating my abilities, because I remember my friend showed me a CPU, and it was some ceramic with some metal pins sticking out of it, and I was like, "Oh, we can make this." And he's like, "Do you not know what a semiconductor fab is? There's so much that goes into making a processor." But I started this entire journey, and actually in high school I was really into liberal arts, right? And so I was a musician. I did that stuff. I did graphic artistry on the computer. I thought I was going to go into 3D animation or advertising, right?
So you're very creative. So your high school career before you got into electronics, you're very creative.
Yeah, correct.
Either
exactly,
you're creating music, videos, or graphic art.
I went to this fantastic high school called Hightower High School, and when it first started off, it's kind of demised today, unfortunately. But it was a fantastically progressive program, and what they had is they had 4 colleges, pre-colleges in the high school, right?
Okay.
And they had a computer academy, they had an engineering academy, they had a medical academy, and they had a broadcast academy.
Okay.
And this was cool stuff. The engineering, the computer kids, we had tons of access to IMAX and Photoshops and whatever else.
Yeah.
The engineering kids were building robots. This is all in high school, right? It's usually stuff that you do in college, not high school.
Yeah, high school, you're stuck with the boring shit.
The medical kids are doing intern rounds at hospitals, and they're doing pre-med stuff. And the broadcast kids have their own TV station in the high school, and we're doing our own TV shows, right? And so it was just a really fantastic place to be. And I was on the computer side, right? And so we were using Photoshop and Illustrator and Flash and everything to make stuff on the web.
Why did you choose the computer side? Was that just because you viewed that computers, you can create the graphic design stuff, so you want to learn more about the tools to create the stuff?
If you really want to go back to the very origin of my career in technology, the Genesis, it was the video game Command and Conquer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I loved video games when I was a kid, right? I loved Warcraft and Starcraft and Command and Conquer. And we had these clans, right? And these communities, and I'm like, oh, I can make a clan website, right? And we can make a website for our little group.
Yeah.
So I start learning HTML and all the stuff that goes into making a website, right? And that's where I got started with Photoshop and Illustrator and everything on the computer, right? That led to me going to the academy and learning scripting on the web and whatever else,
so
right?
That kind of sparked your interest
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
nice.
my father was always a diehard Macintosh fan, right? He's always been a big Mac fan. We always had computers in the house growing up. It was funny. In my house, there was no PlayStations, Xboxes, or PCs. It was all Nintendo and Macs. That's all it was. He was a big fanboy of both brands, and that's all we were allowed to have in the house, right? So I went to Hightower, and that was a fantastic experience. And my career got shifted for me senior year, right? And so I was really big into like 3ds Max and 3D animation and like doing all that kind of stuff, like the little videos and special effects. And I saw myself going into like the special effects industry or whatever, maybe, right? And so we had this local graphic design company that was, with senior year, everybody got an internship, right? And so for years past, this one local graphic design company in Sugar Land had hosted all the computer engineering kids for internships in their senior year, right? And my year as a senior, they pulled out at the last minute. And so they're like, oh, well, you can either take 4 more hours of classes a week, or you can go to Texas Instruments with the engineering kids. And I was like, I'm going to TI. I'm not hanging out in 4 more hours, right? And anyways, and so I got an internship at TI when I was like 17, working in my senior year in high school, and I was with the marketing department, and they had me make some marketing websites, and we did photo shoots and all this kind of stuff. So they put my like graphic design skills to work, right? And I was pretty good at it, at least good enough for them to pay me like $8 an hour, because I got an internship my summer after high school, right? And so they had me there all summer, and I don't really know if like my boss said, hey, we've run out of marketing work for you. We're going to have you interview with the engineering manager. And I'm pretty sure that was code speak for, we're tired of you, Ken. We're going to give you to engineering now.
we're passing the buck.
Yeah. And so he had the engineering manager come down and interview me. And he's like, well, do you know C coding? And in my head, I was like, well, I know PHP. That's got to be pretty similar to C. So I said, yes.
Okay.
That was on a Friday. And so like I frantically it's like, okay, you come start in the engineering department on Monday, right? And so I frantically ran home and I taught myself C code all weekend. And then I showed up on Monday, and all of a sudden I'm an embedded C software development intern, right?
So did you enjoy the marketing side of things? I guess the creation of it.
Absolutely. It was a lot of fun. I mean, marketing is fun because you get to study, your competitors. You have to study like what people, but not really what makes them want to buy, but like what is good about your product that someone would buy, right? And so that was always fun to do, right? And so it was interesting at TI because we were selling microcontrollers, right? And so microcontrollers are the little tiny miniature computers that, at TI was in the automotive department. And so we were doing the little processors that would go in your airbag system or your radio or whatever else in your vehicle, right? And, it was funny because we always sold these things, like we were negotiating with customers, and it's like, you're going to pay 12.5 cents versus 12 and 3/4, and like that's a big deal because like 1/4 of a cent is a big deal when you're selling 20 million of something, right?
Oh yeah.
And so, but yeah, I mean, and that really got me into engineering and everything else, right? And so, I started college as a liberal arts major, like continuing the graphic design thing, and it was totally weird because I was waiting tables in the evening, in the afternoons I was in college for like graphic design and the liberal arts, and then like most of the day I was at TI doing engineering, right? And all the guys at TI were like, what are you doing in liberal arts school, man? Switch your major to engineering. Get the heck out of there. You have a talent for this stuff, right? And so I did, and I switched to computer engineering and electronics design. And I actually never finished college, so I did 5 years of working at TI during the day and going to the University of Houston at night, and then I got into the oil field, right? And so
so tell me about that. Tell me about that jump from TI to the oil field.
Well, so I had a little bit of experience with high temp electronics, right? Because we considered 125C the automotive rating, right? And so that was pretty warm. It's similar to like downhole a little bit, right?
Okay.
And so, but God, if you really want to go to the origin of this one, in French class in sophomore year, this is an embarrassing story. I was hitting it on this girl, right? And very unsuccessfully. And she's like, "Nah, I don't like you, but you know what? You play guitar. My brother plays drums. Why don't you hang out with him?" Right? And so we got into this band.
And you got passed again.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but I got to know their family really well, and their father worked for Schlumberger, right?
Okay.
And so, and he kind of got to know me, and he knew I was technical, and so he recruited me into Teledrill, which was this little company, right? So they'd all left Schlumberger, and they're working in this little NWD startup, and he got me to come from TI to Teledrill, right? Well, it really wasn't him. He got me interested technically, but it was actually the entrepreneur who was operating the business that got me to come, right? And I remember making the jump from TI to Teledrill was really scary for me, right? Because TI, big company, I was going to turn from like being like basically an intern into a real employee and have like benefits and a career path and all this kind of stuff. And there's lots of the people that were encouraging me to do that. And so there was like a really secure future for me at TI, it looked like, right? And so I was like, they're like, you're going to go work for this little tiny oil field startup, like the oil field?
Did you know anything about the oil field?
No.
Okay.
Like nothing. Nothing whatsoever, right?
Yeah.
And it was funny. The entrepreneur, he said to me, he's like, "Ken, why don't you want to come work with us?" I was like, "Well, I've got job security for TI at TI." And he says, "Ken, what's job security?" And I was like, "Well, job security." He was like, "Ken, job security is a myth. Yeah. I mean, the only job security you have is the job security you make for yourself by making yourself better, right?" And I was like,
That's some great advice right there.
Sold.
Yeah.
Sold. Okay, I'll come join you, and he was right, and that was a fantastic experience. And that's why, when I was working at Teledrill, it was fantastic because like I'm 20 years old, 21 years old, and they let me write all the code for like all the NVD systems and everything else like that. And it was fun. I met Abe there, and we got to really learn a lot about technical chops and got to learn NVD systems and all this kind of stuff. And man, I'll tell you, like I really struggled in college, right? It was hard for me to find a calling. Like I kind of begrudgingly switched to computer engineering based upon my experience at TI, but I wasn't like I liked writing code and all this, but I wasn't like passionate about it, right? And so I actually, this is something I usually don't admit, but like I remember being at freshman orientation in college, and they said, look to your left, look to your right. 2 out of the 3 of you will not make it through college.
What a shitty thing to tell students.
But it's statistically correct, right? But the weird thing was in my own head, I went, yeah, it's probably me.
Is that because, is that just because one of those things where you're like, hey, look, I know myself. I'm not going to dive into something unless I'm passionate about it.
Well, I was really passionate about working, right? Like I really liked going to TI and working for 8 hours a day because I felt like I was always pushing the envelope and like I'm like going and doing stuff at my day job that you as a freshman that you really wouldn't see until you were a senior in college. Right. So I was like, I'm learning so much more on the job. What do I need college for, right?
Why do I need the theory behind it?
The only reason I was going to college for a degree was so that I could say I have a damn degree, right? And because Tia's like, well, it's really going to be hard for us to give you a salary as a full-time engineer if you don't have a degree. Even though I've been working there and outperforming other degreed engineers, but and really it was a good time for me to really focus on like trade and on the job training because I was going to school. I graduated high school in 2004, and then I would have been on track to graduate 08, 09, right? And that was right in the middle of the crash, right? And I'm really glad that I was working during college because not only did I have like 4 years of experience, I had a career path when everything crashed, right? And like if I had done what I was told to do, which was don't work during college, pay attention to your studies. A lot of the kids who did that at the same time, like their careers got delayed by 2 or 3 years because
they didn't have the experience.
No, because they came out in the crash and there was no jobs in 08, 09 when everything crashed, right?
Right.
Like it was really difficult for a new grad to get a job. And so a significant number of people had their careers delayed and they started working maybe in like 09, 10, like 10 or 11.
Yeah.
And I'd been working, I was like 6 or 7 years ahead of them in career experience because they got delayed and they were only in college, right? And so for better or for worse, I feel like that was a decent path for me, right? And so we worked at Teledrill for about 18 months, and then I told you I was flying to California and getting these gig work and stuff like that, right? And so what happened is like we did like the gig work in the evening for like 6 weeks.
I'm sorry, I gotta pause you. I think that's fascinating to me. The fact that first off, if the person that told you about job security, if he didn't give you that advice, do you think you would have made the leap?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
totally convinced me.
So that just shows kind of the impact that kind of people have in people's career and trajectory and life and all that stuff.
One sentence to me entirely changed my career.
It.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's pretty cool though, how you can dial it back to that one pivotal sentence to you.
Well, it's easy to connect the dots in hindsight, and I could be over attributing it, but it's a pretty simple explanation, right?
But then you this going to California, I guess. What was that? Was that you wanted to learn something, make a couple more bucks, or you just want to learn about new technology, or what?
Well, there's so many startups in California, right? And I was like, I'm going to start a company. I want to be in Silicon Valley. I want to do all this kind of fun stuff, right? And so that's what attracted me out there, right? And so it was really, really interesting.
God, that's so. How long this going to California thing with the gig? So you're working at the company for 40 hours or 60 hours a week, and then you're doing it at nighttime.
Yeah, and Abe and I started working in the evening together, and we would work at Teledrill from 9 to 5. We'd go to my parents' garage and work from like 6 to 10.
Yeah.
And after about 6 weeks, we were exhausted, and my parents were really tired of having us around, right? Because we were like trying to build high temp circuit boards, and like we were melting them in the oven and making my parents' house stink when it caught on fire for like a month.
Oh
afterwards.
Yeah.
And anyways, and so it was really fortunate. We got into some negotiations with Teledrill, and they said, we proposed, hey, let us spin off from you. We'll make our own company, and we'll work for you under contract so you don't lose us, but we get to go do our own thing.
Okay.
Right? And that worked really well. And it was funny because their CEO at the time said, yes, you can do that, but I'm not going to pay you $1 an hour more. Like your salary is going to be your consulting rate. And I was like, okay, sold, right? And at that point we had, it was me and Abe, getting started, we recruited a couple other kind of friends that we knew that were technically inclined.
Yeah.
And we were like 5 guys, and we got set up in this little office we were paying $500 a month for. And then, hey, we got full-time work, now we got a full-time company, right? And so that's the genesis, essentially, right? But I mean, you asked, like, okay, that one entrepreneur saying that one thing to me kind of changed my career path, and you asked me earlier if I worked at the building at TI 59, like I am so glad that I took the leap and went with the riskier choice, right? And not the safer choice. Because if, I drive by that facility today and I could not have a better representation of what would have happened with my career path, right? Because the group that I worked in, which was the automotive group, entirely disbanded, gone. The building I used to work in, demolished, like just leveled to the ground. And my old boss, literally like 2 years ago, was asking, hey man, all the TI guys are gone now. Can you give me some tips about how to get into Halliburton and get a job over there? And I was like, so glad I didn't stick with the safe path, because there really isn't a safe path anymore, right? There isn't. Like, if you're not investing in yourself, whether or not you're like starting a company or you're working as a salaried employee or whatever, the only security anymore is self-betterment, like in any position, right?
You know what, though? I mean, that's such a good point to make. I mean, that's throughout the whole, this whole COVID, experience and all that stuff. You're right. Job security. There's no security. I mean, people like saying that to, I guess, justify a decision when they're trying to make a career path. But after this COVID, after this past 12 months, there's no job security.
The world moves so fast anymore, and things can change so rapidly, right?
Yeah.
Like, these ideas about job security, have evolved over the last 100 years because, it was a big deal in the 70s and 80s when, like, we had the Silicon Valley and the tech boom, right? Because in the late 1800s, early 1900s, everybody thought that like 15% was the fastest a company could reasonably grow per year, right? And then you see companies like Apple and Compaq and all these guys that, Compaq, I think, was the fastest company to $1 billion in sales. They went to $1 billion in sales within 18 months, right? They also were the fastest to go from $1 billion to nothing. God. But I mean, the world changed. It started changing in the second half of the 20th century.
20th century.
Yeah, 20th century. Off 1900 plus one. Okay, we got it.
Yeah.
Started changing so fast that, these old concepts were still around, but they didn't apply anymore, right? And so, it's interesting is, Japanese culture, right? Japanese culture expects, for the longest time, the cultural agreement with a Japanese company was, we're gonna take care of you. We're gonna provide a career path and stability for life, but in exchange, you're gonna dedicate yourself to the company, right?
You're here.
That's where you get the concept of like a salary man who he works himself 60, 80, 90 hours a week, and it's honorable to fall asleep at your desk because it means you're working so hard.
Oh,
right?
You see people falling asleep on trains, like all those pictures on trains and subways.
But Japanese business culture is actually in a big uprising right now. Not an uprising, but they're going through a change because these companies can no longer promise this. They can't promise to take care of you for your entire career because these companies don't have that kind of stability anymore, and the world's changing so fast, right? And so, yeah, I mean, that really is the only path to success anymore. It's no longer, get in with a company, do good, get promoted, build up a lot of credibility within that company. I mean, your credibility in a company only goes inches anymore, and the only thing that you can do to protect yourself, even with all the financial craziness we have right now, it's not a bank account, it's self-betterment, right? Like, you can always, make more money or get a new career if you've been improving yourself constantly, right? And so the learning can never stop, right?
That's an excellent point. I mean, we've had guests on here before that, during the downtime, or if they find themselves in a situation where they don't have work, or there's nothing to do because, let's say, they're a drill engineer, they can't chase rigs, or sales people, they can't do breakfast. It's always fascinating and interesting to find out how do people, I guess, spend their time if there's not a lot going on. Some people sit around the house, don't do anything, wait for things to get back to normal.
Yep. And
some people kind of dive in and either they start woodworking, they start learning data, whatever, Python, they start learning all this stuff, which is, I think, amazing. Riley Norris was just on, and he's like, wasn't much going on, so I decided to look into this.
Drafting thing and everything.
So it's fascinating to see, like, and Dina Dabowski one time, she's like, my question for you is like, what have you done during COVID?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of the Python programming language. I spent a lot of time writing code in Python. I cannot recommend that enough. It is such an easy stepping stone to get into programming, and you will increase your value as like an entrepreneur or a career employee so much by learning it. Like, it's really a good idea.
It's just worth it.
It's absolutely
just
worth it, right?
Like, just take the plunge.
Especially like if you're an NWD hand stuck on a rig in between surveys, like you can just play around with it, right? I mean, you can write little automation to make your job easier, all this kind of stuff, and then I mean that's really, really good time spent in self-betterment is learning that very basic programming language because there's so much you can do with it.
All right.
Yeah.
So we're self-betterment now. So I mean, if we're self-betterment for you right now, currently, if you had time. All right, I'm sure there's
my entire
focus.
Waking existence is a self-learning experience, right? Like I have never gotten to the point with a company where like I'm not learning something new or taking on something new. And like if I find myself doing the same thing day after day, just executing a job function, I get very unhappy, right?
Okay.
And so I am the embodiment of the Peter principle. Like I have always been promoted to the point where I'm incompetent and I just have to learn, right?
Yep.
And so the new
even saying yes to that program that you had to learn over the weekend.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
And so I mean I have really done a decent job structuring it so that my 9 to 5 is betterment, right? I get to do it on the job, right? Now beyond that, it's listening to podcasts like yours, right? And I'm a big fan of the Drill Down. I like the Spears Brothers. They give a good economic perspective, but I mean, just podcasts and audiobooks. Like if I'm going to Conroe to see a client, like I am listening. I mean, either on a conference call or I'm doing an audiobook or a podcast the whole time.
What kind of audiobooks do you tend to gravitate towards too?
Mostly ones that are about like entrepreneurs or successful companies or stuff like that, right? Like it's the really human experiences that you can't really share doing a Google search, right? Like I love hearing about like the story of Pixar and how they came about and stuff like that. And
how did they come about?
I mean, that's I'm going to reveal the fact that I'm a huge Steve Jobs fanboy, but like that was another Steve Jobs company, right? Like they he invested in it. So going back to the beginning, but like Pixar started as a bunch of guys from the University of Salt Lake, Seattle, who were just super into 3D graphics, right? And they wrote some of the first 3D software, and then they became part of Lucasfilm, and George Lucas owned the group for a long time, and then he got divorced and he was bleeding cash, and so he sold the group to Steve Jobs, right? And then Steve Jobs he's obsessed with making computers, right? And so what he tried for like a decade, he tried to get Pixar to make like specialized graphical design computers, like computers that were specialized for 3D imaging, like animation or medical imaging, and they were always flops. Like the Pixar computers never were commercially profitable, and he just sunk money into the company for a decade, right? Like, and then they started doing commercials and using their 3D technology for commercials. And that got them some money, and they were starting to be profitable, right? And then they took a big leap. And like these designers, like their whole careers, they'd always just wanted to make a movie, right? They wanted to make a movie with the 3D tools. And like even George Lucas didn't believe that they could do it. He always thought that like, that they would be good for special effects, but he never believed that you could make a movie,
feature film
3D
with
movie,
it,
right? And so they took a huge gamble, and they made a deal with Disney, and Disney funded the whole film.
Which film was that again?
Toy Story.
That was Toy Story.
Oh, Toy Story, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, that was the launching thing for the whole thing.
Was that 95?
It was a while back.
I think it was 95.
Yeah, and that was a huge leap for them, and they had to kind of sell their soul to Disney to get the funding to do it. But Steve Jobs was brilliant, and what he did that was totally unconventional is he scheduled an IPO for like a week after Toy Story came out, right? And so, really a lot of companies like in the past, like doing an IPO pre-revenue was crazy, like unthought of. Like you had to be a big profitable company to do an IPO. And Pixar was like the second, third company to do an IPO without having like serious cash flows and just burning money, but they're going to do an IPO, right? And so he scheduled it really well to where like they sold to Disney to get it done. They get it out there, it's a smash success, and then the week later they're IPOing, and now they're full of cash, right? But they had a good relationship with Disney for 10 years until they got bought. But I mean, like the path to success with that company is just, it was really tough, right? And I enjoy reading about those companies like that because it really does look like everybody else just has overnight success. Oh, yeah. Jobs founds Apple. It's super easy. He's 17 years old and they go skyrocket. He's a 200 million. That was luck, right? But like all the other companies that he did, like they struggled for a decade, a 10 years of in the wilderness, right? Like when he started Next Computer, like, people always think about like the early jobs as like the one to idolize or whatever else. I've always been much more fascinated by his later years, right? Because he struggled for 10 years with Next and Pixar and turned them both around and made him success, I mean, ask Ross Perot how happy he was with Steve Jobs' performance with all the money they lost on Next Computer, right? I don't think he got a good answer, right? I think the one thing he was quoted as saying is like, well, I just wish I hadn't given all the money to those young Californians. But I mean, I enjoy hearing about how the other entrepreneurs really struggled, and I can identify with that, right? Like, because it's never quite as easy as people make it out to be when they tell stories, right?
Do you ever try to take kind of, I guess, obviously this is kind of might be a silly question, might be a stupid, but there are no stupid questions here around the Rotary, except the ones I ask. Do you ever try to take, I guess, piecemeal, I guess, what are some common, I guess, keys for entrepreneurials to, I guess, get up and get out and get going with their service, product, or company? Like, what top 3 keys that you've kind of gathered throughout over the years that would be, I guess, that you abide by? I'm
a huge fan of the minimum viable product process, right? And so that's like a key process within our company. I mean, it's MVP is you build the simplest thing that you possibly can to sell to get started, right?
Okay.
Because so many groups like make the mistake of like, oh, we have a vision for the product, so we're going to raise money and we're going to work on it for 2 or 3 years, and then it'll come out, right? And when you work that way, it's a total gamble. You are just straight up playing roulette, buddy. Like when it comes out after all that investment, whether or not it's going to sell or be a flop.
It might be. That might have been work 2 years ago, but now we're 2 years later, and that technology is outdated.
You have to incorporate constant, voice of customer into what you're doing, right? And so like the Micropulse is our directional module, right? It's what we started off with in NWD, right? And so we're on like the Micropulse 3 now, and it's like a premier NWD directional module that has fantastic measurements, right? Where that started out was the first thing we built with the technology that became the Micropulse was a single shot. It was a freaking memory digital single shot, right? And so I don't know if many people remember, but for surveying wellbores before NWD, they used to use what's called a single shot or a multi-shot, and it was like an accelerometer and a mag with a memory circuit, right? And you'd run it down on a slick line, wire line with a winch on the rig,
right,
and put it at the bottom, give it 2 minutes to survey, pull it back up, and look at the inclination and azimuth of the well, right?
That was it.
And just that simple. Before now it's a full-blown NWD system, and it's transmitting mud pulses all the time and all this kind of stuff. But like that was the fastest thing we could get to that a customer would actually pay for and buy and validate, right? And so there's actually a wonderful bit of insight listening to the guys from Amazon, and they have their entire working backwards principle, right? And so they even go they even go a step further, and like they try to they look at like everything backwards, right? Like one of the things they do internally in the company is like you have to make a faux press release, like a mock press release, before you even justify the development of the product, and you have to like think about it from the customer's eyes and all this kind of stuff, right?
Okay.
And so I mean, it's really just flipping that traditional development process on its head, right? And then starting as early as you can, and you have to incorporate voice of customer as soon as you possibly can, or you're not going to know what the market really wants, right? Like nobody can really. It's not an effective thing anymore to waterfall develop a product. It's just not, right? And so MVP is something we absolutely abide by.
Well, how do you find out? I mean, let's go back to this because it's interesting to hear this, and I actually want to talk about the culture at Erdos Miller because it seems like the leadership there, the leader sitting here talking to you. I mean, can you just? I know that's another segue, but I really don't care. It's Friday afternoon. What's the culture like at y'all's company? Because it seems like it's very engaging. It seems like it's kind of like a Silicon Valley type of culture where it's like it's high energy, very productive, very creative people.
Yeah. I appreciate that. That's how we come off.
that's kind of that's the vibe I'm getting.
I hate answering this question because I really don't like. I can think of what I'd like the culture to be, but I really like it when you more like ask my employees that question. And I like hearing their answers as to like, because what I think it is like what I would love for it to be, right?
Right.
But when they truly answer, then you get the real answer, right? But I mean, we really live and die by our core values, right? Like our entire hiring system is based on our core values are not this bullshit that you put on the wall, the poster, right?
The mission, the core values.
No. I mean, like we.
I'm so glad you said that, by the way. I completely agree with that.
Oh, I mean, that's one of the things that I've invested into that's had the greatest return, really, like sitting down and really treating our writing down our core values, respect, and going to them. And what we did is we took a looked at our history, looked at our employees, and this is not something that you could come up with a company at day one, right? Like we had to have been operating for years to say like what worked, what didn't work, what was great about it, what was bad. Let's take all the great stuff and let's put that into our core values, right? And so we looked at things that we said, this is the way we should do things. This is where it worked out for us, all the positive things. And we said, we came up with our 4 core values, right? And so I'm going to get embarrassed and not remember one, but like number one is like unstoppable, right? Like we do not give up, right? That's a huge thing for us. Sometimes we go a little too hard on that one, but unstoppable, we focus on growth, right? And so that's that self-learning.
So it's personal growth. It's not, it's personal growth as well.
It's growth among everything. We expect our company to grow. We expect our products to grow. We expect our employees to grow. We are not happy if we have someone who comes in and performs like a job function, right? One of the guys I'm proudest of is our supply chain guy, Tariq Sadiq, and he started off as a electronics technician in our company, right? And he started off just soldering boards, and then he grew up to like managing the guys who do the electronics technicians, and now he's our supply chain manager, right? And so, oh God, I'm going to give you rambling, right? We focus on being effective, right? That's another thing, and it's really about like one of the things I can't stand is like you can absolutely do engineering and development for development and engineering's sake all day long, right? And I'm just not passionate about something that doesn't go out into the world and make a difference. I can't stand ivory tower crap, right? If I make something, I want someone to use it and benefit from it and drill another well or whatever else, right? And so that's really what the effective comes in for me, right?
Is that easy to get buy-in from, I guess, the rest of the partners, the rest of the team? Because there's a lot of ideas like, oh, this might work, this might work, this might work. But I mean, if it's for you, if it doesn't make sense, if it doesn't, I mean, is that difficult to get everyone around the same table and go with that decision?
You'd be surprised when I wrote these down how easy the buy-in was. One of our employees, Rahama, she's just a fantastic developer. Without any asking, she literally went and had T-shirts made with the core values on them, and she started wearing them at work. I was blown.
That's the stuff you like to see.
I was just blown away.
Okay,
it's shocking, right? And our last one is we're open and unbiased, right? And to me, I mean, you need to have a platform of sincerity and integrity, right? Like. One of the things I like to say about NWD systems is that physics will judge you when you put the tool in the ground, right?
Yeah.
It's like no matter how good your financing was or how much
marketing, research,
your marketing and sales guys said or how cool you think it's going to be, there's no breaking the laws of physics when it's in the ground drilling, right? Yeah. And so that has to transfer through, right? And so we used to work a lot with a company that we were like an integrator or alliance partner for, right? And so we'd go in and work on and they made really good tools. So they made really, really good tools. And they would give us these leads for customers who wanted to do it, right? Because they just sold the product, but we actually took the product and turned it into like an actual functioning device or whatever else.
Okay,
right?
all right. And
so we're like an integrator for this kind of stuff. And we go into these clients and like whenever they would give us a lead, they would expect us to do nothing but push their product, right? And I was like, no. Like you guys make really good tools. And they really have a lot of homes and a lot of things, but like we're always going to recommend what's best for the client, right? And often that can be, okay, use this other thing that's cheaper. Or, you know what? I'm not really good at that. You should talk to my competitor. Yeah. They're actually better than me, right? And so that is, it all feeds back upon each other, right? Like you can't grow if you're not honest with yourself about your own weaknesses, right? And so they're all kind of foundational to each other, right? But anyway, so we wrote down these core values and we started living by them, and like they have grown to come into every part of our company. Like different parts of our interview process are designed specifically to test how unstoppable you are, or how honest you are, or how you've been growing yourself, right? Wow. So it's built into our hiring process. It's built into how we level our salaries. It's built into how we review our employees and how we review our status and how we're doing. I mean, it's
a fascinating thing how it encompasses kind of every aspect of y'all's business and people.
And I spent 6 or 7 years thinking it was total horseshit. And then, what was funny is like I tried, we started in 2008, right? Success came easy in the early days. It really did. Like we got to like 50 people and $10 million a year.
Well, how did it come so easy?
Working hard. It was working hard in a good oil field, right? Like it really did, right? Like we didn't have to have a lot of good infrastructure in place. We were just pretty darn good at what we did. And so we got lots of opportunities and lots of contracts. We didn't suck most of the time, right? Okay. But,
Love that. I love that.
Well, it's one of the things we say internally, which is not a sexy thing to say, but like the goal really is to suck a whole lot less than you did yesterday, right? Just suck less than you did yesterday and just keep going day after day after day after day.
And be honest with that too. Be honest, like, look, I had a bad day. Like I kind of messed this up, or I shit the bed over here. Like it was bad. Like be honest with yourself. Like, okay, I could improve on that. a little bit. I mean, every day is not gonna be great.
Well, what I really can't stand with NWD systems is like, it's just like directional services. Like everybody goes in and they say, oh, I got the best guys, I get the best tools, they never fail, all this kind of stuff, right? And we can't say that. It's like, no, guys, look, we feel like we make a great product. It is going to have a failure, but when it has a failure, this is what we will promise will happen every time. We will get you answers within 24 or 48 hours. We will absolutely root cause it. We'll build improvements back in the product. That I can promise you.
We're going to make it right.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
And you got me rambling there. But yeah, I was saying that, I spent like 7 years just working hard, right? Just like working really hard and just executing, just doing the day-to-day, just tackling everything in every meeting, right? And then I was like, okay, where do I start investing, right? And even investing in good tech like wasn't enough. Like everybody thinks of tech as like this magic bullet, right?
No, if you have that, then all of the problems are solved. It's all taken care of.
I mean, I would say to you that, like, in my opinion, technology, innovativeness or whatever else is like 15% of business success, maybe.
Okay.
Like I don't.
Tell me about this a little bit more. Let's peel back the layers. What's the other 85?
I mean, it's your people, it's your culture, it's sales, it's marketing, it's operations, right? Like, a company is this silly analogy, but like it's really like an engine. You can't just have one cylinder not firing and everything's gonna be fine, right? Yeah. Like, if sales isn't performing, it doesn't matter how good the product is, right? If sales is selling and the product sucks, then you're screwed, right? Yeah. And so, if you're not marketing yourself, you're not growing. If you're not, investing in a culture, you're gonna get bad employees, and like everything has to work across the board to be successspecial, right? And I don't even want to apply that label to myself, right? Like, but we're growing, so that's at least good, right?
Right.
And so, I spent almost a decade trying everything else, and I'm like, okay, maybe core values aren't bullshit. Maybe I should invest into that. And so really after the crash in 15 or 16, we reinvented the company, rebuilt it from the ground up, and that was one of the first things I did, right? And so there's actually this phenomenal book called Traction.
Okay.
And so, it's interesting is it totally seems like change your life miracle horseshit, and a lot of times I don't like to mention it because it kind of comes off as like I'm a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
But it is just a really good set of ideas and processes for running your business. And so what the guy who wrote the book did is he went out, he ran a business, and he went out and he studied like 150 businesses that were successful, and he kind of compounded that down into a very simple entrepreneurial operating system, right? Okay. And so look, a good company like has some amount of processes, right? I starting as an entrepreneur as like a young guy, 21 years old, like fuck processes. Processes are for big companies. That's how big companies die. And like after like bleeding, I'm like, okay, a little bit of process is a good thing.
Well, because
right?
I guess you would feel as an entrepreneur, it's like, I guess who were some of your idols growing up as entrepreneurs? I mean, Steve Jobs.
It was always Jobs, right?
Jobs, right. Yeah.
I love Larry Ellison just because he's such a badass, right? And he started a lot later in life than the other guys like Steve Jobs and those guys. But like, 21 years old, I'm worth $200 million. Larry Ellison didn't start till he was like 34 or something, right? And so that was always a big thing for me. I do, and there's a lot, some negative stuff about Amazon in the press, but like I am like Amazon's dominance is absolutely shocking, and it's absolutely something to emulate, right? If we get more local, I've always been a huge fan of Marvin Gerhardt, right, in the oil and gas industry. Marvin Gerhardt I was really privileged to meet him before he passed, and I was always just amazed that he built companies as big as they were and was successful in oil and gas, like huge oil and gas hero of mine, right? So just give you some of my examples, right? So
no, but I'm saying that. But a lot of times people think of process and core values. I mean, you're right. You go to a company like Texas Instruments or these large companies, and there's all this core values, mission, all that stuff. It's kind of like you have to have it on the wall for a checklist to be ISO 9000 certified. You have to have it.
A lot of people treat it as just a compliance thing. I would venture a guess 70-80% of companies just they write it down so that they make the HR guy happy, and then off we go, right? Like
I've seen it.
Yeah, it's something to take very seriously, right? And that's been working, right? Like I've always been such a tech focused guy, so I've always felt like get the tech right first, and everything will follow. And after beating my head against that for almost a decade, I gave up, and I was like, okay, no, we're going to work on the core values, and we're going to get our company working right, and we're going to run really well. And then now we're just like, the tech is just coming out at a rapid pace because we have all the kind of human underpinnings, making it all really happen, right?
You establish an environment for it to grow organically, right? Naturally.
Exactly.
And something that and obviously I'm switching gears, I want you to actually keep rambling.
It's fine.
I love hearing this stuff. It's fascinating. Like, you're talking, I'm like, okay, I have a question, but I'm never remembering. So I went to, so y'all have a YouTube page, right? Erdos Miller, you have, hour-long conversations. You have 11-minute conversations going over some basic stuff. And we were talking before the podcast. I think that's awesome what y'all are doing, because I was saying, like, I'm not a technical guy, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just not. But I was watching some of the videos y'all made yesterday, and it's great how it, as you said, is back to basics. Because a lot of times you've been in the industry for 2 years, 20 years, and all that stuff. You just assume that people know X, Y, Z.
It is a really bad assumption that like 99% of people make, including myself, for a long time, right?
But I keep going. But I enjoy the fact that you're like, I mean, you've been in this industry, you're constantly grinding. It seems like you're always thinking.
Well, I mean, yeah, when it's something that ends up being trivial or basic to you, you make a fundamental human error in assuming that everyone else knows that, right? And they know the basics of it and all this kind of stuff. And it's really just not true. I mean, there's just so much out there to learn that, I mean, I'd love to see some basic fracking videos.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a frack guy, right? I'm on the drilling side. I do NWD mostly, right? I'd love to see some basics about. I mean, I understand motors and rotary steerables and NWD pretty well and all this kind of stuff that goes in the BHA. But I mean, completions, I get the basic idea. You put it down there, you frack it, you blow it up.
Yeah.
But I'd love to see some more basic videos, right? Even though I've been in the industry so adjacent for so long, you'd probably assume that I know a lot of stuff about frack, and I don't, right? And so I'd love to see that kind of stuff as well. So no, I mean, it just helps to go over the basics, and one of the things that's actually was really flattering is we actually had several of the directional companies tell us that they incorporated our podcast into their onboarding process.
Really?
Because we covered so much of the basics of NWD that it's like, okay, we have new hires, they're going to listen to this podcast because they put all the basics.
I mean, I can definitely see how that, when I don't want to lose a screen here, it's literally Erdos. I'm actually on your website right now, but it's literally Erdos Miller. Just check it out. I mean, there's a bunch of videos up there, and you're talking. I watched a couple yesterday. It was a good time watching them too.
Thank you. And it even helps for us, right? Like, I mean, whenever we were onboarding people, I used to spend a bunch of time saying, "Oh, this is how NWD works. These are the parts, right? This is how the mud pulser works, and all this kind of stuff." And like, it's even fantastic for us because, like, okay, for our own onboarding process, okay. You need to go look at all of our marketing because it's really educational. Yes. And you need to listen to the podcast as part of your onboarding process, right?
But it's not so much industry specific where it's like, okay, this is good for our industry folks to learn about this or that. I think the point is you make it so anyone can watch it and understand it, whether they're 1 day or 1 hour in the industry or whether it's 15 or 20 years in the industry. You make it so everyone can watch it. I think industry education is crucial right now, especially what's going on right now with the geopolitical, the narratives and all that stuff. I think education, not just people in our industry, but also outside our industry, so they understand a little bit more. Because again, I watched this Netflix movie. I had a 7-year-old Bigfoot.
I haven't seen that one yet, but it's been in the news, right?
Bro, I'll show you a 4-minute clip about it. But the thing is, though, it's like the guy is talking. It's like, oh, there's bombs, the big Bertha bomb's going to go, Big Daddy bomb's going to go, and the oil's going to come. So I think to have these basic educational things, so not only just onboard process, but also just share with their family, your kids, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, oil definitely gets a bad rap, right? I mean, this is a silly story, but I remember being in a bar in New York and trying to hit on this girl, and I told her what I did, and I was like, oh, I work in drilling technology in Texas, oil and gas, and she's like, oh, you work in oil and gas? That's like bad. And I was like, you're drinking beer from a plastic cup. Yeah. I mean, oil is such a fantastically good underpinning for our society. Like, we got so lucky that there was oil on this planet in the first place, right? It's like finding a charged battery in the ground that we can just take advantage of, right? And so I don't, I am a huge oil proponent. I mean, people are like claiming, oh, well, Chevron and BP and everybody else, so they're starting to invest in the geothermal and other stuff and solar. They're calling peak oil. It's like, okay, you call peak oil for like the 10th time.
I think it's been peak oil for 30 years.
The reality is we're not going to stop having babies, right? Yeah. And the human population is going to start going up. And if Elon Musk has its way, we're going to start populating Mars. Yeah. And we're going to need a ton more oil, right? So I mean, we're just, our dependence is going nowhere as a society. Like this is a critical resource that we need to keep growing, right? And so, I'm a huge fan.
But the narrative is not often connected with the reality. What you're talking about, the population growth, everything like that. The narrative is not. It's like, oh, we can just flip something on tomorrow, but it's not the case.
I mean, if you're not, I remember a buddy of mine that I grew up with in middle school. I reconnected to him sometime after college and just caught up like for a couple minutes. Yeah. And he's like, I told him I was working in drilling, and he's like, oh, we still drill for oil? I was like,
What?
Dude, like, how are you? He's like a realtor in Florida. I was like, how are you so disconnected that you think there's no drilling in the world? Like, what do you think's going on here? You know,
Well,
it's crazy.
Not really shame on it, because honestly, I grew up in Connecticut. You know, like I went to Texas A&M. I was in Texas. I still had no idea about the oil and gas industry. I didn't know how it got from underground to the pump at all.
Yeah.
And shame on me, but I'm not feeling bad about it, because I mean it seems like that's the majority of the population.
The Weiss Energy Hall at the Museum of Natural History is fantastic. It's amazing. My son loves going there.
Oh, how old's your son?
He's 5.
All right, yeah, I brought my 7-year-old. She always wants to go see where Daddy works. It's unbelievable. So, do you remember when it was on the second floor? It was gloomy.
Yeah,
it was dark. The fourth floor is unbelievable now.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah, they got the PRS system up there. They got you to
the rides and everything.
Yeah, it's a really cool. And I like how it also shows how it's it's not just oil, not just renewables. It's a blended hodgepodge of energy provide. But the thing is, though, it's not separate, which is often what you hear today. It's either this or that, or that.
We are just so far from, and everyone's memory has gone from like how much oil changed the world in the last 100 years, right? Like what the world was like before that, right? And like, how many people that the oil and gas revolution allowed to be born and grow up and all these kind of things. And it's just forgotten from our collective conscious, right? And so, hopefully when we have events like, the big freeze and everybody's staying warm because of natural gas, maybe hopefully we get a little bit of bit of a new perspective, right?
Or even when North Face wouldn't sell, what was it, Innovex? When they wouldn't sell them the jackets, again, that brought a lot of stuff to the news because you use petroleum products. So, I mean, you're right. There is a huge disconnect, or not a memory that's lost and all that stuff. Kind of but at the same time, it's integral. And I kind of, when those things happen, I think it sucks. First off, it's frustrating, it's disappointing, but at the same time, it also provides an opportunity to teach people, I guess, how involved hydrocarbons are in everything.
Yep. I mean, I'm going to get into like a controversial opinion here, but like, I think oil is incredibly valuable, right? And so, I'm a fan of all forms of energy. More energy is all the time.
I agree.
I really want to see, directional drilling expand into geothermal. I want to start drilling geothermal wells, but we do have a limited amount of oil and gas at the end of the day, and we need to be really careful with it until we get off this planet and find more something else. And I'm sorry, I'm way too sci-fi here, but like, I'm also okay with the idea that we don't necessarily need to burn it for fuel in a car anymore. We can focus on using it for petroleum products or everybody else, but it's still a critical resource, absolutely critical for human survival.
No, it is. I'm thinking about. I want to get back to kind of, I guess, the entrepreneurial side of you, because I think I love hearing about this stuff. It seems like you can keep on talking about it and go on and on about it. And so it's books. It's taken. So do you? When you hear about, I guess, a certain practice that they did, or they started doing kind of a procedure, is that something you're like, oh, I can try that out here and see how it goes? Or it's like, that's not going to work. I mean, here, obviously there's no playbook that's set for every one of them, right?
No, you have to listen to a lot of the good ideas out there and then, transplant the ones that you think will work, or try them or mutate them a little bit, right? It's like there's no one size fits all piece of advice, right? And we talk a lot about, I was a great podcast with Mr. Mark Henderson Leary, and he had the best word for this, which was tuition, right? And so you think college tuition is expensive? Wait till you make a business mistake. Oops, $30,000. Oops, $100,000.
Yeah.
It's like, that's painful. But I mean, you learn so much on the job as you go, right? So we were talking about marketing earlier, and like we spent, $300,000 over 5 years on really ineffective marketing before we started doing it self with it.
When did you find out that it was just ineffective? Because I'm not ineffective, because I did the same thing. I did the same thing here when it came to CPC. I mean, it wasn't communicated directly. So when did you find that out?
I mean, you can outsource, like somebody else can make you a pretty nice website, right?
Yeah.
But they're not going to be in your customer's head about like, what is it that makes you, and why would it even work for you, right? And like I believe the only content that's worth producing anymore is like valuable educational content, right? Like stuff that teaches, or stuff that really truly shows the performance, like a case study or whatever else. And you can't hire an outside technical writer to do that, because they're not you. Like, it's just silly to expect to be able to outsource that. But so many people treat marketing like a checkbox, kind of like they treat the core values. And it's like, oh yeah, there's tons of firms out there writing wishy-washy, content. I mean, and the only value you get out of that is like, you get a little bit better SEO hits, whatever else, right? And so, I mean, it just marketing has to come from the heart and it has to be organic and natural.
Genuine.
It has to be genuine, right? And like, there's Jobs actually had a fantastic point that like, marketing is so noisy and there's so many people out there trying to say so many things that when you get your chance to speak, what you say better be really valuable, right? And you better really be genuine and sincere about it, right?
And it's tough to, I guess, I kind of agree with what you're saying too. I mean, if you aren't communicating that to the end user and you're outsourcing that, I'm not saying it's bad to outsource whoever's doing that or anything like that, but to me, I know you got to watch yourself. It's like, no, I'm not saying it's bad, but to me,
you can absolutely outsource some very effective marketing things.
To me, it feels like if you're not really kind of have the reins of the communication you want to get out there to the customers or to the end user, then it's kind of like playing telephone. You know what I mean? Like you're telling someone else to tell them what, it's kind of, there's certain, it gets lost. It gets lost. It kind of gets diluted a little bit. Yeah. And it doesn't hit on kind of what you want to communicate.
Yep. Totally.
So I think that. So what kind of challenges, I guess, so we're seeing activity kind of pick up right now. So we're recording this March 26th. So we're seeing what kind of challenges or what are you getting excited for, I guess, moving forward from today?
So it's funny, like I sat down with the customer yesterday and he's like, Ken, I gotta hire some guys. Got any good recommendations? And I go, you're the 10th person that I've said no to. I have no recommendations because a lot of the really good talented guys, like the good ones that stay to have jobs and they're happy and they don't really want to move. There's very little movement. And then a lot of people who moved out in the last couple downturns, like they've moved on permanently, right?
Yeah.
So like
that's not a bad thing.
No, I mean we're going to be facing a manpower shortage as the market picks back up, right? Yep. And then we're going to have to start retraining or automating or whatever else, right? That's going to be a big challenge for everybody going forward, right? Obviously, I'm excited for things to pick back up again. Like I like seeing these plus whatevers in the rig count. For as far as I'm concerned, it could stay +1 forever as long as it stays +1 and just slowly inches back up, right? So. One of the things that we're really focusing on is and this is obviously a silly keyword, is big data, right? And so really going forward, even NWD systems are going to become incredibly software dominated. And so the data that we're collecting and seeing and improving upon is just getting really fun and fascinating to work with, right?
Yeah.
And so, there's been two huge big data projects for us. And so one is our continuous azimuth measurement, right? And so that was a huge big data project where that measurement is incredibly difficult for an NWD to calculate, right? Like what we're actually doing is we're calculating the azimuth, the direction of the well while you're drilling, rotating, stick slipping, breaking up rock, right?
Okay.
And like we had to figure out how to cut through all that noise because usually you have to stop drilling. They call it measurement while drilling, but it's like more like measurement pausing drilling.
So they stop to find out. Yeah. Okay.
They pause for a second at a connection or whatever. They measure the azimuth and they go forward, right? Well, now the expectation and the desire is that we can measure azimuth along the way as we drill, right? While we're drilling, right? And so that was a really, really hard project. That was extremely difficult. And we struggled with it for probably 2 years, making almost no progress, trying this method and that method and whatever else, right?
What kept you going, though?
Sheer stubbornness.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you that type of person that, like, once you set your mind to something, we're going to figure this out, guys? And girls.
Like I said, I struggled in college. The first time I got on a rig and was like part of a team building an NVD system, I was just obsessed. Like NVD systems are so much fun to me because they include so many aspects of technology and engineering, right? Like if you want to compete in a modern NWD system, you have to have a mechanical engineer to build the outside, the housings, the pressure ceilings. You have to have electrical engineers to build the circuit boards. You have to have firmware developers to write the firmware that goes on the tool in the ground. You have to have controls engineers to write the filters. You have to have data scientists to analyze the data. We have to have software developers to write the decoder on the surface. We have to have web developers to write the automation in the web. There's like no part of like the technology stack that NWD doesn't touch.
I love that. So to you, it just doesn't get boring.
It's incredibly technically fun and challenging,
and
right?
It seems like with all the the chefs in there kind of coming in, it seems like you're describing it to me. It sounds like it's its own organism. You need to have everyone in, and it kind of creates the the engineer that creates the body, the software, the technology, everyone.
It is a really fantastically. I like big challenges, right? And it's a big challenge to build a good system with all these different disciplines, right? And that complexity is actually increasing, right? Like to make a good NVD system in the past, you didn't have to have controls engineers or data scientists. Now you do. Like the bar is going nowhere but up, and so it's fantastically interesting. But so I was talking about the continuous azimuth, right? And so we struggled for years with that. Like, we just weren't getting anywhere, right? And so what we did is we came up with this chip called the flight recorder. And the flight recorder has like a gigabyte of memory, right? And what we did is we just ran tons of jobs and we recorded the extreme high resolution data of the drilling path the entire way through, right? Okay. And so we took like dozens of wells of that back into the computer and we ran thousands of simulations on all this recorded data. And we were able to do thousands of virtual well tests in the simulation on the computer to recompute and figure out how to calculate this measurement on the fly, right? Wow. Like it was super fun, right?
Wow.
But if we had not switched to a big data-driven model, we would have never gotten there. Like all of the test fixtures and the test runs in the field, like we were inching forward and we had to go miles, right? And only that the big data process really let us go miles, right? And so we just came out with our decoding platform last year, right? And so the decoder is the thing that actually the software that goes on the rig and picks up the mud pulses and tells you what they're telling you, right? Okay. And so we took a big data approach to that and we built this data warehouse. We call it Decode Lake. It's just a cute name, right? So there's this thing in computer science called a data lake, right? So we just made a play on that and called it Decode Lake, right? And so what we're doing now is we are, with all the customer's permission, we're capturing pressure data from all these rigs all the time, right? And any sort of little tiny issue the customers have, they're able to report that to us, and our system auto flags it. And our developers go in and they constantly are working extremely efficiently because they're able to see where the biggest problems are and what the patterns are, and they're able to address that quickly, right? And then on top of that, one of the things that we've started doing now is we have introduced machine learning, right? And so what we have all these thousands and thousands of drilling stands of data on the cloud now, and these machine learning, we just call them workers, these machine learning workers are redecoding them, and they're trying their own experiments to try to make the decoding better.
Wow.
Because they know how to redecode it. They know how well they are doing redecoding it. And so they've been programmed to try thousands of combinations. And so 24/7, they're just sitting there working. And
yeah.
So our decoding platform is literally getting better at this point when our developers are sleeping.
That's fascinating.
It's
crazy.
It's so much fun. It's just shockingly fun, right? And so it used to be, design, test, develop, deploy, right? Now there's a new step in there, which is gather data and introduce the machine learning. And so that's going to be a critical thing, not just for oil and gas products in the future, but like pretty much any type of product. It's going to be heavily driven by big data and machine learning.
What's interesting, and this is probably, I'm probably going to say this, and you're probably in your mind, you're like, what the hell the fuck are you talking about, JP? But what's interesting about that, tying it back to Pixar, so you're talking about machine learning. These things are working while you're sleeping. They're running their own things. So in Pixar, Toy Story 4 or 5, whatever that was, like they made these AI little spiders. So they would create spider webs they would take all this data. And so when you're talking about it's going to kind of go not just in the oil and gas, but kind of everywhere else, like you're already kind of seeing that like it with Pixar and all that stuff, where it's like the machines, like AI, just like, okay, this would be a spider web, it'd probably be this big. So it's interesting to see the machine learning, the AI side of things kind of pick up the slack or kind of learn the processes that versus a human sitting behind the computer and doing that.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating to me.
Yep, it's
crazy.
It's amazing. It's really a lot of fun, right? But I mean, what I've always appreciated about the Pixar guys is one that was just one more good example for me as an entrepreneur, because it's very demotivating when you feel like everybody else has overnight success and you don't, right? So it's always reassuring to me when you see someone else struggle for a decade before they start kind of tuning it in, right?
Well, it's the whole comparison thing.
Yeah, exactly.
The joy,
And on top of that, I mean, I feel like a lot of people like this job and technology. It's really hard. And it would be really nice if if I could just keep making the same thing and just print money, right?
Yeah.
Ain't gonna happen.
Doesn't work that way.
Ain't gonna happen.
Especially
right?
technology.
The world is so aggressive now that if you're not constantly, I mean, Elon Musk said it really beautifully. He said, whoever innovates the most, that's who's going to win the market. Just period, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to embrace the chaos and the change and the constant innovation. That's what I've always appreciated about the Pixar guys is they're always like, okay, we got that done, we made that effect, we look really good. And what's the next one? Now, okay, we're going to do a billion leaves on a digital tree, right? And so it's just always been fascinating to see them work.
Right? Or the tangled hair, every strand. man. Yeah,
it's got to push something forward, right?
So you're driven, you're motivated, you're an entrepreneur, and you're also stubborn. When have you ever been in a situation when you're kind of trying to tackle a project and stuff? When is not the giving up point, the point where you're like, you know what, let's focus our energy somewhere else. Did that ever happen?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we definitely had failed technical projects that didn't make the market, or the key technology wasn't good enough, or whatever else. Right.
What keeps you pushing for those 2 years if you're only gaining inches of ground?
I don't know, man.
Like how? So how come after 2 years you were like, all right, screw this, let's focus on this over here? Just because it was such a need, you think, or is this one of those?
No, yes, we forecasted the need, but also NWD really is my passion, like for better or worse, right? Like I think more about, NWD systems in the shower more than like anywhere else, right? And so I'm like, I could put that together and this while I'm sitting there letting the hot water run all over me, right? And so I'm just obsessed with it, right? Like even if I totally, utterly failed and this company burned to the ground, I would start another one and I would do it again until I'm number one.
I love it.
Like I am just, that is, I mean, I sometimes wish I had this passion for a bigger market, but this is my market and I'm going to be the best in it, like just period, right? And I've just embraced that, and that's what keeps me going, even after 2 years of failure.
I can't imagine you at TI right now, just like not following your passion right now, just kind of not pursuing what you want.
I am almost 100% confident that I would be a very miserable person if I had stayed at TI. Like I did not got out on my own, right? Like I really enjoyed being an entrepreneur. It's really terrifying. It's really scary at times, right? Man, I remember in the worst parts of 16, for like 2 weeks, I was thinking like, oh my God, why did I do this? This is ridiculous. I should have just taken the 9 to 5 to Halliburton. Like this is, but then, I got over it and I started taking steps forward again. I'm like, oh yeah, this is for me. This is what I like. Right. So, I will probably be an entrepreneur for the rest of my life unless I just get really tired or something.
So I asked you this before, but kind of where do you focus? So you get out of work, you're thinking about MDD and the show. Where do you focus your energy and time, when you're not at the office or when you're not, what is your other passions, I guess?
Well, my family's a big passion for me. Like my business takes so much from me that like there's very little left for hobbies, right? So I really try to put the rest of the energy into my family,
right.
Hanging out with my sons, and with them. I have 2 sons. Gavin's 5 now, and Oliver's about 1.5.
Okay,
they're fantastic kids. They're both terrifyingly smart. Gavin, you have like a very logical conversation with him. It's like, oh my, how did he deduce that? He's going to kick our butt when he's 10. Like,
yeah, he's 5. How do you figure that out? Yeah.
And so I love building with them. We do Legos, we do Duplos. Last weekend we built some Lincoln logs for the backyard out of 2x4s, about 2 feet long, and you could stack them together with notches in the side. And he had a fun time building like a house for his little brother. And I was just watching him out there, and we bought some 2x4s and some fence planks for the to fix part of the fence, and they were in there's like a stack in the driveway, and he found them and he starts building stuff out of them. Like, okay, well, he's having that much from a 2x4. Why am I spending money to go in the Disney World?
Yeah.
So, but no, my family's a huge passion. I play guitar, right? So I like, when I can, I like to play guitar and teach myself songs or play with the guys in the band. There's a few videos of me on YouTube playing guitar somewhere.
Let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this. What type of we chatted about this before with the listeners to know.
Yeah.
So you were in a couple bands.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, let's get into that a little bit. You wanted to be a rock star.
I wore the Jinko jeans, mostly all black, and the big jeans back in high school, right?
Oh my God, I remember those. Yes.
Okay. The
all
big bell bottoms,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And so I was in rock bands, System of a Down, and all these, Slipknot and all these guys.
I think the singer of Slipknot's gonna be playing at House of Blues coming up. Not House of Blues, yeah, House of Blues sometime coming up.
I kind of miss Fitzgerald's, man. That was cool. We played.
Oh man, they knocked it down. You played there?
Oh yeah, we played there several times, right? It was really great, like a big honor to be able to play there when like so many really big acts had played there over the years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we played on the main stage 2 or 3 times. It was just like little.
Wait, upstairs?
Yeah, open mic nights or whatever.
I remember growing up in Connecticut. I used to come down and visit my buddy John, and we used to go to not Fitzgerald's. Yeah, Fitzgerald's, because I'm thinking of Fitzwillies in College Station.
Okay,
we used to go to Fitzgerald's, and I remember going to the downstairs and going to the upstairs. Yeah, that was such like the cool place to be.
It was a cool place.
It was, and it was kind of heights, so it was kind of dangerous back then.
Well, I always felt like there was a 30% chance at any given concert that floor was just going to cave in.
Because you felt it.
Oh yeah.
Especially if you're playing rock and roll. I mean, my wife's
mosh pits going or whatever.
My wife's stepfather used to play there all the time. Yeah.
And so that was a lot of fun. Throughout most of my 20s, I played in a prog rock band with my friends from high school. And then last few years, I was playing in kind of a cover band doing pops and stuff like that. And so that was just a lot of fun.
So you still enjoy playing playing music, okay.
Absolutely. It's a fun hobby. It's not my job. Like I actually noticed, like I wanted to be a rock star, but like what I really noticed about my behavior is when I was playing with the guys, I'd study a lot of music, right? And I'd get better at guitar. But like when I wasn't in a band, I'd kind of forget about it. I wouldn't do it. And like, but when I got to being an entrepreneur in oil and gas, like I would just work on it 24/7 without anyone forcing me to, right? And they say in life, you're supposed to find something that's like really hard to do, but also really fun for you, right? And oil and gas and NWD for me was that fun and hard thing that I just felt naturally drawn to, right? And so I really gave up on the idea of being a rock star when I realized it's like, I'm not practicing 24/7. Like I enjoy it. I have fun. I like playing the concerts. I like getting better. I like hanging out with the guys. But I'm not John Mayer in my room 24/7 doing nothing but bleeding my fingers on the guitar.
But the thing is, though, you enjoy it.
I did enjoy it as a hobby, right?
Yeah.
But then I noticed that like when I got into the working as an entrepreneur, that I enjoyed and worked on 24/7 and just without end, right? And so I was like, I should probably do this, right?
How would you tell your son or people out there how would one find their passion?
Oh, big question.
That is a big question. It's such a broad bullshit question too, but it's true though. I mean, a lot of times people are doing the same thing in and out, and it's not fun. To me, life's too short. Do what you love and have fun with it and be passionate about it, right? So how would one find their passion and get on that train, take the entrepreneurial step and do it?
Silly things, get out of your comfort zone, try new things, right? I've always said that if my son struggles with dating, I'm always going to tell him, well, do you know how to dance? And if he says no, I'm gonna say, okay, that's your problem, right? Because like I did not have much luck with the ladies when I was in high school or in my 20s. I think in my late 20s, I started learning how to country western dance. I went way out of my comfort zone.
Oh, bro, I took a country western dance in college at A&M. Yes, I get it.
And so like I transformed from this like metal goth kid in my like 15 to 17 years old to somebody who's like going out country dancing at Wild West on a Friday night, and like overnight total difference in my ability to interact with anybody, right?
Yeah, man,
so
Friday night was VIL night, very important ladies night. I remember Wild West. I remember Wild West back in the day.
It's gone now too, right? Jeez.
I think it is.
Yeah, I think it closed during COVID, right? So yeah, the Houston's not what it used to be, right?
It's not.
But no, there was I can't remember the name. There was an author, and she came up with that thing that she says, okay, if it's fun and it's hard, that's your calling, right? Because like there's a lot of fun stuff that you can do that can be passionate about, like music, which you're not really likely to make money at, right? And there's a lot of hard stuff, like accounting's hard. Engineering's hard, but it's such your passion. You can definitely make a career out of it. Like, for finding something that you're passionate about, find out what's fun and hard for you and just go for it, right? Yeah. And so, I mean, besides just experimenting, trying out new things and just following your interest when you can, and I know not everybody's privileged to be able to do that, but like, definitely, I actually heard some podcasts recently that says, following your passion's bullshit advice. And I was like, I entirely disagree. Yeah. It's worked pretty well.
Yeah. So. No, I that's the thing too. I mean, especially coming after this whole, COVID thing, people did, losing jobs and, all this stuff, life being short. That's the thing. It's like, I fully strive to tell people to not just just find something you enjoy and just start doing it. I'm not saying do it for your work, but start, and you never know where that can go.
I think there's enough opportunity, especially here in the States, that a lot of people can really follow a good passion, right, and really enjoy it and feel very fulfilled by it.
What is and this is kind of what's kind of a misconception about our industry that you would like to could address or want to address or want to talk about?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
Besides us being all bad and evil, to me, I'm sorry. No,
please go ahead. Yeah.
I'll fill the silence right now.
Yeah.
I'll fill the silence right now. To me, it's the general logic that the oil field is not it's not really technology driven. Data and all stuff.
I was going to go the same way, right?
Well, do it. You talk about it.
I mean, we are everyone's fighting so hard right now, right? I mean, like I mentioned, the NMBD tools are totally transformed by software. That's something that has not been true in the past, right? There's tons of people out there like the Mobilize guys and the Corva guys are doing a good job with the drilling data and everything. And like everyone,
you didn't see this shit that long ago. I mean, it's kind of taken forefront now.
Like, what's shocking to me is, and maybe I'm being a bit of an elitist here, but like if I look at everything that we've talked about doing in the industry and everything that we've still yet to done and have done, like we haven't even begun to automate things.
Yeah.
Just haven't even begun, right? And so the thought of how much oil we could produce when we have like a truly automated system, factory drilling, everything we want to do, like it's going to be shocking. Like one of the things that's been really impressed me is like, the amount of oil we can produce with less and less rigs every year, like it's shocking. Like just that trend going up. How many million? If you look at like per rig and per frac crew, proportionally, that activity compared to footage and production rates, like this trend is shocking, right? Yeah. And so, I'm not so sure that easy conventional oil in the Middle East is going to be dominant for that long when we're improving so much over here. It's just absolutely shocking.
And
right?
The big push is technology right now.
It's I would just call it knowledge, right? Like it's just making better decisions. Like so much of oil and gas has been voodoo bullshit.
Well, I've done this for 34 years.
Exactly, right?
Tell me how to drill
for so long, right? And so I think now that we actually have data, and like one of the things we're still missing as an industry is just stop talking to me about technology until someone ties drilling to production. Like award your drillers a bonus based on how many freaking barrels of oil come out of the ground.
Yeah,
not a record well, not how fast
not how fast. I mean, we talked about that.
Just tie it together. Just stop talking about it and tie it together, right? And so I think the first software platform that does a really good job of analyzing all the drilling and production data and finding a good correlation and giving people real insight to that is where it's really going to be, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that to me it's shocking we don't do that as an industry, right? But I wouldn't say that like, I think a huge misconception is that we're not a technology-driven, industry. Like if you actually read about Schlumberger's history, they used to have R&D centers in Silicon Valley in the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Okay.
It's crazy. Like we've always been a very technology-forward industry. This technology is really hard. It's shockingly hard, right? I mean, it is by comparison like so much easier to build a circuit board for a computer than it is for a downhole system. It is like just a completely. I like to say about this industry, well, at least with NMBD and everything else in drilling, it's like we have all the requirements of space with none of the budget. We have to build a satellite-like thing that goes miles underground. Has to work reliably. Has to succeed in the mission. Has to be reliable, and we have to get it done on a shoestring budget compared to the billions they dump into a rocket or a satellite at NASA, right? And so that's one of the things that I really enjoy about this sector of the industry is very little red tape, no FDA. We just get to build shit and try it out, right? We worked in medical devices for a while with the FDA. That was just miserable. But I'm not a big red tape guy. I like moving fast, and I hate
you hate dealing with bureaucracy and bullshit like that.
Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's just a massive challenge, right? So, I mean, we are, there's a lot. We probably hang on to stuff that just works for too long, but that doesn't mean people aren't trying technology. It's just a really difficult market to try technology in, and then really it's a difficult space. I mean, yes, a rocket, has some shock and vibe. It doesn't have 35 Gs RMS with 250 G shock hits for
nonstop,
200 hours while it's drilling a run,
nonstop.
Beating the living F out of it, right? Like it's not the same thing, right? So, but it's fascinating.
I think that's an excellent thing to bring up because we are a very technological focused driven industry. I mean, we don't like talking about it like that, but it's true. I mean, it's what's driving us, driving better wells, and I like that whole tie drilling into the production side of things. I think that'd be phenomenal.
Why aren't we doing that? Like, what's going on?
Well, what it is, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a drilling engineer for those of you that don't know, but to me, it's one of the things like. I remember when a previous company there was a project we were building rigs, and their goal, the engineer's goal, was to get that thing days out of shipyard, get that thing out of shipyard fast, build it, put it out of shipyard fast as possible, and then they'd hand it over the operations, and their job was done. Like, we got it done, record days and all that stuff. But it doesn't mean that the rig was operational, that it could drill it well. I mean, it still had to do all these tests and did all that stuff. And to me, it's just kind of like, what's your motivator? What's your motivator? For example, as a drilling engineer, I would imagine a motivator is to drill the safest, fastest well record, right? But that doesn't mean it's going to be the cleanest well. Completion is kind of the same thing. But so you need. Kate Hyken came on. She had a great point. She did roles in drilling, completions, production, so that you understand kind of what's motivating people. What's driving.
It'd be great to have.
That would be great. Yeah. So, and that's just communication. That's communicating. That's learning something new. That's constant learning. It's, okay, well, how are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Is this important? Okay, so if I did this, would this help you out? And so you're kind of tying in the whole process together.
Some of the best drilling engineers I've worked with, we have these really fantastic multi-hour conversations about technology and like, would this help or not, right? Like, it drives me nuts when like, we just want to know whether or not you have a tool that performs or not. I've actually sat down and had technology future 5 years off technology brainstorming conversations with drilling engineers, and it's just really fantastically fun, right? So we are thinking about technology all the time in this industry, right? It's funny because like, I don't want to be, it's going to make me sound a little bit arrogant, right? But a lot of times people are like, oh, we're going to come into oil and gas and we're from cell phones or we're from Silicon Valley and we're going to flip this thing on its head because you guys don't know what you're doing and you're all backwards. And it's like,
dude, we've been trying that for years, man.
Best of luck, buddy. Come on in.
We've been trying that for years.
Water's warm. Come on, bro. I won't go into that story, but I don't want to poke fun, but you get my meaning.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I know people come in and think it's all easy. Like, oh, you just don't know what they're doing. No, we've been doing that. We've been trying.
What we do is we send wireless signals from 5 miles away through the damn dirt, and it's ridiculous, right? Like, radio doesn't work, GPS doesn't work, cell doesn't work. Mud pulse and electromagnetic telemetry. Like, find me another physical phenomenon that will send radiation or energy through 5 miles of rock.
That's fascinating.
It's just crazy.
It's
right?
mind blowing.
It's interesting. Like, the electromagnetic technology actually evolved for the military. There are these massive antenna stations that are built in, like, I think they're like in Pennsylvania or something, but it's like a 27-mile long antenna. It's a shockingly huge antenna, right? And what they're used for is when our subs are really, really deep, they can't receive radio communications. Like, you can't use a satellite or an onshore radio to talk to them, right? And so you have to some way to tell the sub, hey, surface, so we can communicate with you. And so we built these, and the Russians built these, and there's these 27 mile long antennas that use the earth as a conductor and send like a 5 hertz radio wave across the planet to tell the sub to surface so we can talk to it through a satellite. And like, that's the genesis of like the idea of the electromagnetic technology that we use to send wireless mud pulses, because we're using the drill string, which is 2 or 3 miles long, as a big antenna, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just really cool, like just shockingly cool.
Fascinating stuff. That's real cool stuff. So, okay, so we're coming up on an hour and 20 minutes now.
Geez.
But honestly, I could sit here for another 40 minutes or an hour, another hour, 20 minutes if you want to. So what else? What? Coming on the show, I know we've been kind of going back and forth and kind of planning. What do you want to discuss? What do you want to plug right now about Erdos Miller?
Plug? Oh man,
let's do a plug. Let's do a plug. I mean, we've heard about you, your theories, your books, what you do, how you drive your team. Give a little plug on Erdos Miller real quick.
Man, put me in the hot seat. Elevator pitch, right?
Complete elevator pitch.
We really focus on being true partners with our customers, right? Like, it's not just about the tech we provide. We really want to work with people who feel the same way we do, right? Yeah. So I told you that the core values kind of permeate our company. They also permeate who we work with. We decide who we work with based on those core values. And, we have a big will to win, right? Which is a great phrase that we borrowed from racing. And if we meet a client who doesn't have that same will to win and grow and be really aggressive, it's like not going to be a good fit for us, right? Yeah. And so we really focus on providing fantastic drilling technology to partners who believe in work and fight the same way we do, right? And so, yes, it's about what we have today and what's working, what's commercial and what's not, right? But it's also about tomorrow, right? And it's about going out and getting that next job and what do we need to get the next 10 after that and whatever else, right? And so, we just really like one of the things we do, which is just crazy to even think about, we have quarterly leadership meetings between our leadership team and our clients' leadership teams. Like, it is some of the most insightful meetings we've ever had.
Is that something that y'all brought about, that y'all needed to do because you need to talk to the end user to understand what they're actually what they need, what they want?
That is how tight we get with our clientele, right? Like, we really spend that much face time with them, right? And understand their business and their needs and everything else like that, right? But I mean, our two big products right now is our micropulse directional module and our Eclipse Touch receiver system, right? And those things are just fantastic, right? They're very commercial. They're working extremely well. Clients are really enjoying them. We're really pushing the envelope on both things, the measurement side and the decoding thing, right? Okay. And then what's really on the horizon, which is going to be fantastic. And I mentioned earlier we have kind of a partnership with Black Diamond. Yeah. But they're a partner with us, and we are building with them the Eclipse NWD system, and that's going to be a very radically different approach to NWD. Like, we have really turn the entire thing upside down and kind of like rethought how it should go together and how it should be, and really built towards that automation, manless, everything we've been talking about really building a true next generation system, right? And so that's in field testing now, and you're going to see it coming out soon. And it's going to be really fun.
Well, no, that sounds fascinating. But how would y'all go about, I guess, introducing that to a customer? Or because if it's new and it's cutting edge, people don't like that. They like knowing historically what works. Oh, we've done this, we've done that. So how are you? What's the plan to, I guess, address this or bring it up, or I guess, I don't use the word sell it, because it's not really selling. If it's good product, people want it. So I guess how are you communicating this and getting people to reframe, I guess, the paradigm of what they used to think? We
don't go in and pitch the product though. Like we've looked for people who have similar thoughts to ours, right? And so when we talk to like an operating company, a directional drilling company. Look, I mean, it's not like Erdos Miller operates in some vacuum and we have all these brilliant ideas that nobody else does, right? Everybody else is thinking the systems need to go more manless, right? We all have similar feelings about where things should go, right?
Yeah.
And so, when we meet someone who feels the same way we do or thinks the same way we do, pitching the product is natural, because it's like, okay, that's what I want, right? And not only that, like the product doesn't come about first and then we pitch it to the clients. Like the ideas for the product started by having conversations with the clients in the first place, right? And so it's not like we have to start from scratch. Oh, here's this brilliant thing that I've been inventing for 3 years in total secrecy in my garage, and here you go. Do you like it? Like that is not how the conversation goes at all, right?
Yeah, dude, I would have liked it 18 months ago.
Yeah, exactly, right? So. And so it ends up being a pretty natural conversation, right? But like even with the operators, we look for operators who are technology forward, who are have a real big will to win and want to change things, and are willing to take a big risk and try the next step, right?
It's so fun too, working with like-minded people like that who have that strive, strive to improve, something like that. I just did one with Alex Goodwin, who it's not released yet. It'll be released by now, but he's over at Vertice Oil Tools, and he said the same thing. They've been in, I guess, I don't know, design whatever for 2 years. And I said, well, you release that. It's going to be outdated. He said, no, the number one thing that we do, we sit in front of the customers first. That's the most important thing, to find out what they're looking for. Let's build this together. Let's find out what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. And if it's outdated, if it's something that doesn't work, it's kind of similar to what y'all do. Y'all are having these serious conversations, these constructive conversations about kind of what are they looking for, what works, and what do they want to see. Yeah. And then y'all just kind of take that and run with it and still include them in the process.
Yep, absolutely. And often that's a pretty hard task, because like translating what they're saying to you and how they're feeling and like what they're thinking about the market in the future in the technical requirements is like 99% of the time pretty tough.
Okay.
Really a tough task, and takes some practice to get used to. But I have been lucky enough to sit with one operator who said, well, Ken, if we could do this, that would be worth this much money to me. So can you make a product that is, that will do that and come in under this? I'm like, yeah, we can do that. So only been blessed with that one time.
That'd be something else, yeah. Man, I first off, I want to thank you for coming in and spending time and talking. Do you want to bring anything else up? Anything?
I tell you what, man, this has been exhausting. So this has been really good. So yeah, I'm coming up to a blank wall. So I appreciate it.
I'm spent. All right. Yeah. Okay. What's your favorite sci-fi movie, and what style do you like?
What's my favorite sci-fi movie, and what style do I like?
Well, yeah. So for example, me, I like dystopian future style.
So give me a dystopian future.
What is it? I mean, Blade Runner 2049 was pretty good.
I haven't seen that one yet.
Equilibrium was pretty good.
I did like that movie.
Really good. Yeah, I kind of like that whole like 1984 like dystopian future style.
I'm easy. I'm a big Star Trek nerd.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Kirk, Spock, all those guys, Picard. I'm a big Star Trek nerd.
Did you grow up watching that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember going to see Star Trek 6 with my dad, and when I was like 8 years old in the theater, like I love Star Trek, right?
They were using those little cell phones. They're like, no way that's going to happen. Here we are doing that.
I'm pretty much any sci-fi. I'm looking forward to the new Dune, that they're coming out with.
That's going to be unbelievable.
Yeah. I actually like the old Dune, even though most people hate it. I think it's actually pretty good.
Okay.
It's a weird movie, but I had a funny joke the other day because I love Star Wars too. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I mean, and it's funny because like Star Wars truly is it is more of an opera than sci-fi.
Yeah.
Right? It's just cool characters doing cool things.
Yeah, cool shit. Yeah,
it just happens to be with spaceships.
Yeah.
Right. But I heard a funny joke the other day that was like, okay, we can all debate all day long whether or not Star Wars or Star Trek is the number one. We can all agree Stargate is a solid third.
Stargate. Oh, with the Kurt Russell.
Yeah, no, the TV show they did Stargate SG-1 for years.
I'm talking about Kurt Russell back in the day.
What I've really been feeling a need for, and maybe I'm slowly turning into my father, was I want more new Westerns. Like they
haven't done it.
I really appreciated the True Grit remake they did. That was a fantastic movie. There's a really good series on Netflix called Godless, which is about some a breakaway guy from a gang that they fight, and
I think I saw that.
It's really good. They have the town that's all full of women because all the men died in the coal mine in the accident. Yeah. It's really fantastically good, right? So
what was that one movie with
I love Django Unchained.
Yes.
Brutal movie, but really good.
And that's obviously Quentin Tarantino, which
I saw a funny thing about him the other day. It was like someone was saying, Quentin, do your movies have to be so violent? And he says, look, man, you don't go to the Rolling Stones concert and ask Mitch and Keith to turn it the F down, do you? No. So yes, my movies are going to be hyper violent, right?
If you don't like it, don't watch it.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
If you don't like it, don't watch it. But that's a good call. They need to make another Western. I mean,
more good Westerns.
Yeah.
Like I think the industry industry kind of burned itself out in the 50s, 60s, and 70s with Westerns, and it's kind of been all superhero movies and sci-fi since then. But like I'm feeling the need for more good Westerns,
Let's do Tombstone 2.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Or just new stuff.
Bringing it back.
310 to Yuma, that was a good movie.
We'll do a 610 to Yuma. Yeah, the one that he missed. So anyway, everyone, this is you can find Around the Rotary on obviously you're listening right now, but you can find us on Instagram and YouTube. And again, leave a review, leave a comment. We appreciate everyone tuning in. Again, everyone, this is Ken Miller, the CEO and co-founder, partner, entrepreneur, fascinating gentleman. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for taking your time. And again, I really appreciate it. And again, I can be talking to you for a long time. Again, it is Friday afternoon.
We can do it again sometime.
We'll do it again sometime, definitely. And thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. And you can find Ken through. You can find him on LinkedIn. Again, it's Kenneth Miller. And we'll be sure to put the Erdos Miller website and all that stuff so they can check it out. And also Small World. I guess it's y'all's podcast is sponsored by Gibson Reports too.
Yes,
David Gibson.
Big fan of David. David and I have seen eye to eye for a long time. Right?
I can see that because he has that entrepreneurial mindset too, just like you.
He's absolutely crazy. He's a crazy person.
I love that guy.
He's great.
He's unbelievable. So I would assume that sit in a room with y'all too. That's what we should do. We should get you and him in the room together and just have a conversation. I think that'd be fascinating.
Well, you should throw somebody else in there that will actually argue with, because David and I will agree with a lot of stuff.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll go over list names after this then. Again, everyone, thank you for listening Around the Rotary. Again, this is Ken Miller with Erdos Miller. Check them out. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll talk to you soon.